In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form or void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. Welcome, everybody, to the third episode, but it's technically the 8th episode, but don't worry about that, of Theology Unbound. We are today going to be talking about creation. I brought a special guest to join me. He is a veritable expert on creation. He knows so much on it, it's crazy. I'm just kidding. He actually just knows a bit more about it than I do because I didn't study it as much. So anyway, so today we're going to be doing a bit of a dive into creation, and we're going to be extrapolating. No, that's the wrong word. We're going to be extricating. No, that's also the wrong word. We're going to be expositing this one and possibly two, but probably just one.
We're going to be a lot of passages.
There's going to be a lot of passages going on. So we're just going to get into a lot of the details and talk about the interesting stuff. All right. So welcome back, everybody. We also just launched a new Twitter page that's run by one of our friends. And just if you guys want to go check that out, I'm going to put the link in the description. But just get us out there and put the announcements and stuff. All right, cool. We'll just get right into it. All right. Was there anything that stood out to you in Genesis 1 when I first read it? Is there any interesting details that we can talk about that you found interesting?
I guess one of my favorite parts about this passage is the detail and the personal in this. It's a very detailed account. The God of the universe wanted to explain how he created to us.
Right.
And he told us how he did it.
Yeah.
Which means we don't have to guess. We don't have to speculate about how it happened. He told us how it happened.
Right.
And if we can just have the humility to, it's very detailed. I mean,
yeah.
It covers all the bases.
Mm-hmm.
It set the foundation of our week, the 7 days, and the seventh day of resting also ties into the Sabbath for the Jews later. That ties into Exodus, where it's as God created in 6 days, and then rested on the seventh. You will work 6 days, and on the seventh you will rest. Paraphrasing, but that's Exodus. That's Exodus 20.
Is also very straightforward. It's not like it has a bunch of hidden messages or hypothetical days, which we'll talk about later, and all of that. It's very straightforward. It's like there's evening and there's morning, the first day. And it's very straightforward. Like, it just tells you what's going on and what happened. Does that mean there's no mysteries about it? No. But it means that it's very straightforward. It's being very just, this is what happened. You know what I mean?
It's not like Daniel or Revelation where you kind of sparse and be like, let's
it's like, what does that mean?
Figure this out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thankfully, a lot clearer. Thankfully, he did not write the Christian account like that.
Yeah.
I can be very grateful about that.
Yeah. And I guess the reason being because the further in the future it is, the harder to describe in the current terms, stuff like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, yeah, it's very straightforward, though. It's just very to the point. Just this is what happened. This is what he made. This is what they were. Yeah. So is creation an essential doctrine? Like, in your opinion, what would you say?
I would say it is maybe not an essential, as in you can't be saved without it. I would say it is important, as in maybe just under the essentials. Essentials being the person of Christ, the work of Christ, the Trinity, and maybe salvation. I mean, just really core stuff that you have to have the understanding, which is the gospel. You have to have that understanding correct.
Right.
Now, important doctrines, they can warp your view of the gospel.
Right.
But you could be saved without them.
Right.
it's one of those things where it's like you could be saved, but it's probably going to mess up your view, but you could
Definitely.
be saved out of it.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it's because it ties into to sin and Christ. I mean, the first prophecies about Christ are in Genesis 3. So
Right. Right.
you
Right.
have the creation account, Genesis
Right.
3, the fall. So sin enters the world. There's the
Right.
corruption of man, and then you have the first prophecies of the seed,
Right.
crushing the head of the serpent, the seed of the
Yeah.
woman.
You have the start of the
Uh,
seed war
yeah,
in the book.
exactly.
Yeah.
Which you have all through the Bible. I mean, yeah. So it's the beginning. It's Genesis means beginnings.
Yeah.
So it is like your birth is the genesis of you. So this is the birth of the world when all physical creation came to being, and possibly spiritual, but we'll get into that,
We'll
like
get into
how that
that.
works later. But
Yep.
at least in the Bible, it tells us about the physical genesis of man and of all things.
Yep.
Um, and I think a banger right off the bat is the first four words. Read them. Read them.
All right. In the beginning, God.
Boom. Just think of it. It's his story. His history. It's his story.
It doesn't start with man. Man doesn't come for another
Exactly. In the beginning,
you know what I
God.
mean? Exactly.
It's dude. It's it's just right off the bat.
Yeah.
He is the most important. He is the main character in this book. We often lose our way and like, oh, this person did that and that person did this. But over it all, the sovereign hand working his will through through history,
Yeah.
through the scriptures.
Yeah. Yeah.
God. It's all about him. It all points to him. Past, present, future.
I heard one person use that as a proof against atheism and how people say the Bible is false. If the Bible was false, wouldn't the Bible be a lot more man centered? As in, like, why would the Bible have stories like Jonah in it and stuff where it's
Mhm.
like portrays man in such a bad light and that kind of stuff? Because man isn't the main character of the story; it's God. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I don't think it's exactly that. I think the reason that this couldn't be a made-up religion is it's so crazy. It's who would make up this story, have it have 40 people over 1,500 years write 66 books that are cohesive, tie
Yeah.
together, tell a coherent, beautiful story that no human mind could have thunk up.
Funk. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
I
I
mean,
totally agree.
dude, it's almost insane to believe.
It's literally it's
When you
crazy.
read a story like this this guy is either the most genius person ever or it's God. And we don't know a genius that smart. Not even old authors like C.S. Lewis or Charles Dickens, J.R. Tolkien, like these amazing writers who just scholars will study so many works have been done extrapolating on their work. That doesn't even come close to the authorship and depth of the scriptures. People have been studying this book for like 4,000 years, different parts of it. The completion of it about 2,000 years ago. So the whole thing says 2,000 years ago. The majority of it started to be studied 3 to 4,000 years. That is insane.
That's crazy.
Like, like, dude, just and it hasn't. We haven't run out of depth. Like piles upon piles, as it says at the end of John. It's not no amount of scrolls or paper in this world could contain the character and worth. The story. There's so much in here that can.
Oh yeah.
How many sermons have there been just on this one passage? The first couple of verses.
I
It's
don't think enough, in my opinion. Even though there's been so
exactly,
many, there's not
but
been
there is a
enough.
lot.
Yeah.
Like Steve Lawson has a fire one on that. I highly recommend. I just listened through his Genesis sermon series.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, dude, it did. It is so. It helped me see Genesis in a whole new light.
Oh wow.
Again, it's just the depth that is in some of these passages
Yeah.
that are easy to overlook in just your day to day reading. Like just the beginning. Most people just read in the beginning, God created heaven. Just
Yeah.
I've read this 1,000 times, memorized it when I was 4.
Right. Right.
The banger of passage coming out in the beginning. God, He's the first. He's the
Yeah.
last. It's
Yeah.
all about Him. And then He was there before the earth. Verse 2. The earth is out form and void. And then you have the third person of the Trinity in the second verse.
Yeah.
You have in the beginning God, that's all of them, the Trinity, God, the Spirit in verse 2,
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, throughout this passage, you have God the Father speaking and working through the Son, because if you read the first chapter of John,
Yeah, we know from
you
John.
have all things were created through him, and without him, nothing was made that was made.
Exactly.
So you have God the Father
Right.
working through God the Son,
Right. Right.
who is using the power of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
All three creating.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just
So
instantly Trinity
it, it
confirmed moment.
I mean, exactly. I mean, if you look when they're creating man, let us make man in our image. There ain't multiple gods. It's one God. Three persons. Our world. It's like people who say it's just like, oh, it's that doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, it's in there, so it don't have to make no sense. He said it happened. We're
Yeah.
finite breaks. It's like, I mean, second verse, you have another person, so it's not like there's multiple gods. It's the Spirit of God. It is the Holy Spirit. It is the the Spirit of God is another person of the Trinity, not
Right.
not not the Spirit, like God has a body and a spirit and he can just kick a spirit out or something. It's the Spirit of God is a separate entity from God
Yeah.
the Father. So it's
Well, separate person, not entity.
well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Yeah,
You
yeah.
gotta you
Good.
gotta watch the language when you talk about the Trinity.
It does. It'll throw you. I mean, separate as in distinct person, but
Yeah.
they are united in will,
You have
and
to.
that's how it's one God. So just think about it like this: Trinity. Okay, three persons. So
Yeah.
three persons
Yeah.
united in one will.
Yeah.
The reason we could not do that as humans, we all have sinful, corrupt wills that want to do whatever we want. That's why we have to come under the subjection of the will of God,
Mm-hmm.
and we become more Christ-like and become one body. We start becoming closer as one body. You see, because the uniting of wills.
Yeah, I know what you're
We
saying.
won't ever come to the point that the Trinity is,
Right.
but the Trinity is one God, one will, acts
Right.
as one, but in three parts. It's just
Right. I'm just saying because like
it's.
people mess up so much when they talk about the Trinity is like with all their different illustrations, like people will
Oh,
be
I
like,
know I'm done
oh,
when I'm talking to you.
like the egg or like the water and that kind of stuff. You know what I'm
Oh, dude,
saying?
those are the worst. Those
I
are
know.
those.
That's what I'm saying, aren't
Don't try
they?
to attach it to physical things. It's a metaphysical with wills and spirit. It's like it's not. Don't try
Yeah.
to
Exactly. I know.
physicalize it.
I'm saying those are crazy. Anyway, yeah. So creation is not an essential doctrine, but it's
But
like
it's very
second
important.
importance. Like it's so important. If you get
It's,
creation wrong, you're gonna like fall into all the different wrong categories.
yeah,
Like if you start believing in quote unquote when they say believing the science, it's not that it contradicts science, but believing the mainstream science of what all the evolutionists say, how the Earth is millions of years old. They'll bring up all their evidence. They're like,
it's
oh,
assumptions. It's
all this
it's
stuff.
it's it's crap.
Right, which
Evidence.
we're
It's
gonna talk about it like later. But suffice it to say, if you get creation wrong, you're gonna get a lot of other things wrong down the road. And I heard
yeah,
one person say that we focus so much on the end times when we and then neglect the just as important, if not more important, foundation of the end times. You can't even have the end times without the creation story. You know what I'm saying? They neglect Genesis, but they're like,
yeah,
let's just talk about Revelation. It's like no, it's just as important, if not more. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
There's some people who focus so much on they'll split churches over the end time stuff, but then they won't even ask about, hey, do you actually believe what God said about how He created the earth?
Yeah,
Like something that has happened and we're not making assumptions about. Like that's all
right,
we can do with Revelation is we can look at it, make our guesses. I know me and you even have difference on that, but
right.
to us, that isn't that important.
Yeah,
It's not even a secondary; it's a tertiary issue. Just it's we can be united under one body.
yeah.
So it's yeah, it's it is essential. I it's not well not essential. It isn't very important. Don't know. I don't think I'd be able to be in a church for like a pastor or elders that believed in an old earth creation. I think it's too important for that.
Like it's not essential, but it feels really essential. What are some interesting points in the Christian story that we went over in Genesis 1? Some of the really interesting ones I saw, I just wanted to throw out some and see what your thoughts. Okay,
Okay,
so when God creates day and night, they're capitalized as proper nouns. I just
correct.
thought that was interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
we can talk about that if there's anything interesting there, because I think that's really interesting. Is there any thoughts on that? Is that not big of a deal? Because like that's a little interesting in my opinion.
Well,
I don't
it's because
know.
he's naming them.
Okay,
So
okay.
names,
I was
it's proper naming. Because if you look down later in that verse, it says first day,
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
capitalized, because it's using as a noun, as in this is thing is called a day, because
Right,
he's already given it that name. So it's as in if you were the first time naming a book, you're like, this is called book. But then after that, it's a book. It's just another book.
right. I
It's
just
not
wanted to point that
specified.
out. Yeah,
So yeah, I see that, and I wish I could make it of more importance, but it's really not more than just
I did want to
it's he's
just bring it
naming the
up
things
because
for the first time.
it is interesting. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Because that's not
Now,
really
if you want,
yeah,
I lean more into the light and darkness part because the stars haven't been created. So it's like
yeah.
the day and night for me. That just affirms about 6 day creation, day and night. It's pretty
Right.
clear. Like
Oh
it's not
yeah.
millions and millions of years.
Right. Definitely.
For for me, it's the light and darkness of God creating the light coming from things, whether it could be angelic beings. I don't know,
We'll get into that.
but I think that could be. But I think something I believe it's talking about is the light created in this universe that's in consolidated on day four to be coming from stars and other
Oh,
celestial
do
bodies.
you mean like God creating the Earth as a mature state, which is why evolutionists are like, oh, but this light would have taken millions of years to get here, but God created a mature universe just like He created a mature Adam and Eve. Is that what you mean?
Kind of,
Like,
but also think about this. So there was a sphere in the void, and so already there because he's hovering over the face of the water. So it's this he's already before Genesis 1 created. We don't know when he's created a ball covered in water, just in the void. Space time had none of that around. He just created this covered in water. Day one, he creates light. So now there's light around. And then
mm-hmm.
again, day two, he takes that water and he separates it. The water he's already got on there. Okay. So it's not like he's creating water on day two, he's separating the water,
Which
creating
that conversation
atmosphere.
is really interesting too.
He's
Like what
creating
that
he's
passage
create
means.
it also says he's separating the heavens. So is he creating a heaven on that time? Again, we don't
Well,
know about that. What we do know is he's separating the expanses, so atmosphere.
there's
First and
something
second first and second heavens are created on that day. Third heavens, we don't know. It's kind of the same thing where angels created on like day one, or they created with heavens in day three.
I do
Uh,
think in the water area, I think it's really interesting that it says he separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse, and you saying waters
mhm.
twice. I think that's really interesting. And I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, that's like the sky," but I'm like, the sky isn't water. So, do you know what I'm saying? So, what does that mean? What do you think? What do you think it's talking about?
Well, I think it's I think it's still talking about separating the atmosphere because the Earth has like we all know it's an atmosphere. It protects us from the sun. So he put that there before he put it in the sun to protect us from something he knew would be shooting rays at us. So it's that pre-thought. But he's separating. So you have the oceans. It was just a ball of water. You have the oceans, and he's separating the waters, as in what are clouds made of?
Water.
There you go.
I do think it's really interesting though the way it's said, and I also want to bring up. I'm not saying we're not doing this, but a lot of people like to take parts of the Bible literally, and then other parts where it's meant to be literal, and people will be like, "Oh, well, hypothetically," and you know what I mean? Because that can happen sometimes. I'm just saying it can happen sometimes where people will take some things like it's really about how far do we take the literacy of the Bible, not how which parts of the Bible do we take as fully like literal? Because there's other parts where it's like prophecy or poetry,
Yeah.
etc. Right? But yeah, so if God says, separating the waters from the waters, does he
hmm
mean waters from waters, or does he mean atmosphere from the ball of water that he made? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's a
Well,
really interesting topic, just because we take everything else literally. And so if it says something weird in the creation story that everyone's like, "Oh no, that can't be true." Even if it's not like not the basic stuff obviously, but the other stuff, it's like we take everything else literally here. So shouldn't we take that literally? I don't know, what do you think?
oh yeah, totally. The whole Genesis, how Genesis is structured, is as a historical passage. The first five books, they're all
Right.
historical. The Pentateuch,
Mhm.
So I really hate it when people take like the first either. Sometimes people will just take like, the first 4 chapters or the first like 11 chapters. They'll take that and they'll say, "This is basically a poetic summary of everything that happened before Abraham." You know,
Mm-hmm.
so they'll try to nuance it. I know what's that guy Jordan Peterson. He's done some stuff on it, and we're trying to like psychologize it or something. It's like oh, here's the hidden meaning behind the poetry of it, and but the problem with that is you're not taking in its literary context. It
Mm-hmm.
is a historical book. It is written entirely as a historical book in a historical format. It's not written. Hebrew poetry has it repeats. So you have a
Right.
line, and then you have another line with different words. A lot of the time, that means the same thing.
Right.
You'll see them repeat stuff because
Yep.
of its
Yep. Yep.
importance. Or phrase it 2 different ways, or they'll phrase the positive and the negative, or the negative and
Right.
positive of
It's two
something.
different kinds of parallelisms.
Exactly. There's parallelism in Hebrew poetry.
Right.
This doesn't have that. This is just saying like how something happened. It's
Right.
not
Right.
saying it happened this way. It happened
Yeah.
this way. Like twice.
Right.
It says this happened, and then you have to the first. It's like you. It's almost like you get the overview of creation in chapter
Yeah.
1, and then chapter 2 it zooms in on the most important part, the creation of man. So
Even though.
it's a very factual, like
Right. Right.
detailed. So it's here's the overview of it all, but this is the focus, man.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And even though it's not like poetically parallel, like parallelism, right? There's a lot of when they're just writing the historical, they'll use like there's a parallelism through the whole Bible, as in like the events parallel other events, like completely. Like Bible Project does so many like things where they trace a theme through the Bible, where so many
Mhm.
events parallel each other, not poetically but historically. Just how God's like an amazing story writer, like incredible.
Yeah,
As in like just the life that we're living right now, the story, but
yeah,
just how much it like parallels all sorts of different things. There's parallelism throughout the Bible, but it's not necessarily like poetic parallelism that they use in their
hmm
Hebrew poetry, like through the Psalms and that kind of stuff. So anyway, I thought
well,
that
yeah,
was
there can
interesting.
be stuff that repeats. I mean, in this story, most stories, artists will be careful enough not to be like, oh, we're not going to be repeating ourselves and stuff. But in the
Mm-hmm.
Bible, it's because it's not telling a story as in making fiction, but
Mm-hmm.
it is writing already past things and writing about future things.
Right.
So because of the way it's writing about fact, so it's actual things, it's not making it up. It's all the mind of God, who's already all flowing from the mind of God through human hands
Right.
and being written down. So the men themselves are not making it up. There's going to be things like that. So it's where words or something where God will put in these, he put in a lot of subtleties the people probably didn't notice. There are other parallels, like even more blatant ones, like you have the first Adam, second Adam. It even talks about that later on. You have and then you have the guy is it Melchizedek, who
Uh,
the king of Salem, who
I don't remember. Yeah, I don't
yes,
know.
yes, yes, that's it, Melchizedek. And then in Hebrews, it talks about Jesus from the line of Melchizedek, as in he is from a line not of the Levite priesthood, but he is still a priest. That was Melchizedek. He was a priest of God
And a
for his
king.
people, a priest of some kind. Yes, he was a priest and king, exactly. Jesus is the ultimate priest king. That was a kind of priest king
Mm-hmm.
for a specific city. Obviously, had a very good relationship with God. Wish we could have more of his story, but we don't have it. So it's like, he
Yeah.
seems like a cool dude. But in Hebrews, that's we get another mention of him. It's
Yeah.
like extrapolating from that like little passage in Genesis where he talks to Abraham. It's like the writer of Hebrews. It's like see the parallels with Christ, this priest king, and then the ultimate priest king.
Right.
It's because I mean, with
Yeah.
the Hebrew audience he's talking to them, the Levites were the priests, and he's showing how there can be a priesthood outside the Levites,
Right.
pointing back to Melchizedek, who was with their father Abraham.
Had many sons. Sorry.
That was not before I said it. That's the one where you were going. You're going to
I'm
go with
sorry.
that.
You said Father Abraham said many sons.
Their father Abraham.
Oh, had many sons.
Okay, okay, I'm
Okay.
done with you.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Anyway, so another really interesting point I wanted to bring up. So, okay, look. All right. I this is This is my opinion. I just want to throw this out here. So, space. And I'm only bringing up space because God created space on the fourth day. Or at least, yeah, anyway. So, he created the stars and
Or
planets, okay, at
did
3
he create?
days.
He created the celestial body.
Right, that's what I meant. You know
He
what I meant.
created
He
space on day
right.
3
Okay,
with
okay,
the
okay, okay,
expanses.
okay. Right. But he made the stars and the sun and the moon
Mhm.
on
Yeah.
day. Okay, fourth day. All right. And I'll bring this up because, all right, I'm going to read a part. So he says, and God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. Okay, now I'm going to read down here the dominion mandate. It says, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion. Here you go. And have dominion over the fish of the sea. Number one. Number two, the birds of the heavens. Number two, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Number three, that's what he gave us dominion over. He gave
Mhm.
us the earth, the fish, the birds, and every other living thing that moves on the earth.
Mhm.
Okay? That's what he gave us dominion over. Now I'm going to go back up there. It said he created the sun and the moon to rule the sky. Are we supposed to be going to space?
But we're not taking dominion over space. We have dominion over the earth. That is our under Adam inheritance.
Right.
Through
That's
Adam,
my
we have
point.
inherited the earth. We'll
Right.
inherit
That's
the new earth through Christ. Again, parallels.
right. So
Space, as
my
in, think of it as we get a room. God has put portraits on the wall, space, for us to look at. We can we can touch the paintings. We can go study the paintings under a microscope closer. We can try to get closer to the paintings. But I don't think space colonization will ever truly work because we were not given dominion over them. Ultimately, we will fall to space because we were not given the ability to rule over space.
my point is, if we aren't given dominion, should we be trying to get dominion? And the reason I say I think we're trying to get dominion is because one, Elon Musk wants to settle on Mars, and if you settle on a thing, then you claim it, okay? And then the same thing, they want to make us outpost on the moon so that they can get to Mars. So what I'm saying is, should we be doing any of that? Because that doesn't fall under the dominion mandate. That's not. We don't have dominion over that.
I don't see a
You know,
need for it. I don't necessarily think it's inherently sinful to want to explore more of God's creation, but to me, I see no necessity in it because there's so much of even the oceans, so
right? I
the
was gonna
fish of the
say
sea that we have not explored.
we
So it's one
neglect
of those
our
things.
actual planet that we actually
Hmm.
have dominion over. We
Exactly.
neglect all the important stuff.
That's the possibly more simple part is neglecting
The actual
our,
dominion
our
mandate.
true inheritance
Right.
of the earth that we were called to subdue and rule over for something that we were not given the rule over.
Right.
And
I
that's
totally
why one
agree.
of the biggest things they have to guess what they have to protect against is the sun. They have to protect against it.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It's it guards and the whole thing is we have the earth because the earth has a shield that protects us from the sun. So the sun cannot rule over the earth because God
Hmm.
has protected us
Right.
from that.
Right.
It's almost like this is the sphere we were given authority over, not the rest of the universe.
That's what I'm saying. I agree. That's what I
Yes,
mean.
yes.
Like, I don't think we should be worrying about space so much. If it's not even in our Dominion mandate, we're neglecting our
Mm-mm.
actual Dominion mandate because if we had spent all the years and the money and the resources, stop trying to find aliens and stop trying to go to space. Hear me out. We took all of that resources and all that time that we had used for that, and we had used it to just like find ways to actually explore the ocean. We would have been
Mm.
able to do that by now,
Yeah,
but we didn't. It's like people are like, "Oh, but it's hard to get down there." I know. Do you think it's hard to? It's not hard to get into space.
it's
Like,
not as far down as you think. Like compared to
so
you have gravity working with
mm,
you if you're going down.
exactly. Yeah. Anyway, well, water resists gravity. What do you mean by that? It has less gravity in there.
Yes, but you still have gravity working with you. You're not fighting it.
Yeah.
You're trying to go straight
Well,
up.
not if you have air in you, then you're just gonna float back to the ceiling. So I heard the
Well,
water.
that's
So
why you use pumps like submarines. You just got to
yeah.
make you really the big problem when it comes to water travel is pressures.
Oh, this is true. It'll crush you.
So,
Yeah.
exactly.
But we
But
could
you
have
also have
found
to
a
make
way
something light
around
enough
this.
where you can get it to
Right.
come back up at
We
some
de-
point.
we definitely could have found a way around this if we had spent all
Mhm.
that time and money on that instead of trying to go to space, quote unquote, quote unquote. I I really don't think we should have been doing a bunch of space stuff because NASA was created by the Nazi scientists we brought over in Operation Paperclip after World War II. which we have historical records for that. Like taking that's an actual historical thing. But we took a bunch of Nazi scientists and we were like, all right, bet, and they were the ones who helped start not NASA, and so it's like super sketchy. I don't think we should have been doing any of that. You know what I'm saying? You hear about the
I don't
Nazis?
necessarily think it's totally a waste because I think we've learned some interesting things. And for me, I love astronomy, so it's me. I get to get a greater appreciation for
Right.
God's creation outside there. It is masterfully done. It's beautiful.
It's
It's
true.
amazing.
I mean,
It's
if
so
the
honestly most of the proof I see for creation is in the space. Like
yeah,
that's where I've studied most of it. There's plenty on Earth, but like in space, just is that's kind of I like that better. But I do agree that all of this research trying to find extraterrestrial life is a waste. I
yeah,
like the whole idea of sending satellites out just so we can see farther and farther away to explore more, you know? But I don't, obviously, since I know neither of us believe in aliens, we both think that's a waste. But the unbelieving horror isn't going to see that.
yeah,
They have their own secular worldview where it's like, I mean, they already believe in the impossible chance of life creating itself from nothing. So it's, why
yeah.
can't they just believe in another impossible thing, you know? When you
Right,
have impossible times one, what's to stop you from believing impossible times two, three, four, five? You know,
right.
it's all impossible still. So
Okay. Is there anything else that you find interesting after he creates the sky and the stars and the moon? Is there anything else that really stands out to you in Genesis one?
in Genesis one, well, I think we kind of skipped over day three when we were counting over because the whole creation of land. And if we look back to what we talked about earlier, where the earth was covered in water, but it had something solid inside because it was covered in water, so it was the earth. So it's what it seems like is happening here when he forms the land is he's almost raising up. You see, he's raising that up, and it's condensing the waters down to the ocean. And so it's not like he's creating just dirt in the ocean. He's
Mm-hmm.
gathering up the waters to pocket them basically in this already formed sphere
Right.
instead of having them flow over the top. Which some of that could be, you know how the flood later happens? He concealed it underneath the land. And
Mm-hmm.
so when he releases it, it covers the earth again,
Right.
and then it drains back down somewhere. We know there's water and magma, so that can be part of that. Is he at this point he's draining the ocean much, you know, bringing them
Mm-hmm.
back so they're no longer flooding the earth, which then allows him to create plant life, which we in the beginning was the main source of food. It was given as food. Meat wasn't given as food till after Noah, and this also because there's only plants given as food before the fall. We know that there was no animal to animal eating until after the fall. Yeah, and then I mean, there's not a whole lot more there.
Well,
Uh,
what I just saw that was
Day three.
interesting is that God created plants before stars in the sun.
Oh yeah, yes. So if this for millions of years, you're splitting it up into each days of millions of years.
Yeah.
You got plants alive for a million years without photosynthesis.
You mean
Don't
dead?
think that word,
Yeah.
but they could last a day and night with photosynthesis.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you
The,
notice he didn't do it like plants on day one, sun on day seven, because then that would might be a problem.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
one day, you know,
Definitely. But yeah, that's definitely another interesting thing.
yeah,
Um, yeah. In the water. Okay. Okay.
yeah,
So when God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, well, like another one of those meanings for the language right there is actually like great like monsters of the deep kind of thing. So like the Leviathan
yeah,
and stuff like that.
yeah,
And I just wanted to like throw that in there because like dinosaurs are created and dragons in the same 7 day week. You know what I'm
uh-huh.
saying?
I mean,
They're
they're
all
just
there.
they're at this point you have flying creatures,
Mm-hmm.
swimming creatures.
Yep.
So any water dinosaurs or flying dinosaurs would have been on this day. Ones that could have gone, and they were either birds of the air or fish of the sea, which is also terms that are used, but it's just for sea creatures and water. And then you have air for flying. And then, so with this one, you notice this is the day before. So this isn't as, it's not, the realm that humans have been put in is not in day five. We are with, in day six, with land animals. We're putting that one because we were given the land as our home. We shall have dominion over the seas and the air, but our main focus should be the land. but that's in day six because that's
Yeah.
where we're created. That's our natural environment. So again, it's more of that, just taking dominion over what we are given, and not being against exploring, but not being so focused on exploring that we're destroying what we are given.
Yep. Or neglecting our actual dominion
Exactly.
over
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Definitely. So, when were angels created in the creation story? Now, this is a super interesting topic.
It's
Extremely
there.
interesting.
We've thrown some hints at it earlier.
Right. So there's a few different possibilities. Okay. Day one says, "Let there be light," and there was light. But then we find out that God didn't make the sun and the stars, which are the ones who give us light. And so the question is, well, what was that? What's going on there, right? And so the question could be, oh, well, that may have been the angels. We also know a kind of time frame from Job when it says like when all the morning stars sing together when they saw him like lay the foundation of the earth, right? And so it's like when was the foundation of the earth laid? Was that in day one or was that in day? Because
With
it
that
also
though,
could mean land. So it could mean they saw when he like separated the water from
hmm.
the land. At the same time, it could
Or
be
the
either one,
foundations are the foundations that sphere, the pre Genesis one.
possibly. See, that's the thing.
So that's where I grew up believing it was before. So like there's a spiritual creation and then the physical creation. We're not told about the spiritual creation because we don't need to know. You know, it's one of those things
Yeah.
where we might learn in heaven, but we don't need to know right now.
Mm,
Not something that's necessary for us to know. Because I mean,
yeah.
in the Bible, there's very limited interaction with the spiritual compared to the physical. There's plenty, but it's much more limited compared. The main
Yeah.
focus is on man and God,
Right.
God's relationship to man. Again, the beginning it's God's story and His relationship to man.
Yep. Yep.
So now, if you don't take that view, there's a couple other spots it could fit. It's not pre Genesis one yet, like you said, day one. It could fit there. I don't think so because angels they are bright and light would shine from them. But I believe that's more of a reflection of them being in the presence of God, kind of like Moses. I don't think that they are inherently light, and so
Well,
I don't think that's what that is. Just he's separating the fact that there is a thing as light and a thing as dark. You see, before there's no concept of it. It's not that everything's dark or everything's light. There's just no concept of that. You see, he's creating a concept into one, which now we can't think of without, but that's just how it is.
yeah. And a lot of
So
this is very speculative just because we don't know. It
exactly.
doesn't really tell us. It does seem like they do give off light in some way because like when they like appear in the sky above the shepherds and stuff, it seems like, you know, like a bright light appeared, that kind of thing. So
Well, also with that again, that's they're coming out of the presence of the Lord, so they're shining. How shiny do you think we'd be if we were constantly in His throne room or something, such? Even in a couple miles, like we might all be shining in heaven, like it's that.
that's true. I mean, we'll be
So
in
it's
resurrected bodies, so
we reflect our Maker.
yeah,
That's the whole thing. You reflect, and that's kind of how that's how we're to be. We're to be reflecting His image.
right.
That's the uniqueness of humans. Yeah. But back to the angels. Another point where they could have been created is with the heavens in day two. I don't think so, but that is a possibility that
Hmm.
heaven was created, maybe the angels were created, and we just don't know that, so it's not in there. But that's just when he did it. And then maybe I guess I know you have considered day four. So why don't you flesh out what you think about day four?
Okay, so right. So what the possibility there is that there seems to be a connection between stars and angels, which we might be able to get into. I don't know. Just from the Bible's language, the way it talks about angels, because it will do the Hebrew parallelism, which we talked about earlier, and it will be like it said something. It was talking about the angels like saw the foundation that's being laid, and then it says, "And the stars sitting together," or whatever, in the morning stars sitting together,
Mhm.
being Hebrew parallelism with angels. All right, and so there's something really interesting there where it seems like there's a connection between stars and angels. The medievals thought so too, and like a lot of other cultures thought so too. That's why they started like naming the stars after their gods, which is really really interesting. But we don't really know that much because a lot of the information we've got about space and the stars and that kind of stuff has been from a secular worldview. So we don't really know that much, like how would that actually work or what actually that is. I like
Yeah.
how C.S. Lewis said it in Narnia. He said, "I thought that stars, he's like stars in our world are just big flaming balls of gas," and then the other dude's like, "No, that's what they're made of, but that's not what they are." I think that's really cool.
Yeah,
Not
I think he said, yeah, yeah, something like it was something like that. I kind of want to look up the quote now, but it's
yeah,
Lewis's.
Lewis is fire. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea, just because there seems to be a lot of parallels there between stars and that. Also, with the sun and the moon being placed over the heavens to rule, which is also really interesting. Also, the stars continuously make noise, which I know they gave us their scientific reason for that, but they give us their scientific reason for everything. So it doesn't really. I'm just saying. Anyway, anyway. Uh,
I got the
well,
quote.
about okay, go ahead.
Here it is. So this is in the Voyage of Dawn Treader. This is
Yeah,
Eustace talking
Ramondu, right?
to it's
It's
one of the stars.
it's one of the stars in Narnia, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it says, "In our world," said Eustace, "a star is a huge ball of flaming gas. Even in your world, my son, that is not what a star is, but only what it is made of."
Hmm. That's really good. I'm just saying. That's so good.
Interesting theory. Like, I don't know if to flesh it out, like how that is, but it's interesting thought. I mean, again, because maybe some parallels between stars and angels. So we don't know, because I know in C.S. Lewis's works, it was some sort of angelic being were the stars. They were very similar to that.
Anyway, so it's really interesting stuff. I will say.
Yes.
Um. Anyway, so I don't. Yeah, just want to throw that out there because that could be a possibility day. Even if I wouldn't think it would be, but it's just a possibility. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So, because
Yeah.
day four, when did you separate the land?
That's day three.
Is that no? Would that be before? So maybe they couldn't. I don't know.
Well, day three is when the land is separated and the plants are created on the land.
Right. And so they had to have, they saw the foundation of the earth being laid. And whether that's the land or that's, like the planet, we don't know.
That's
And
that's why I still lean to a pre-Genesis view of that is because of passages like that where they're there when it's laid. So it's like heaven's already been created. There's been a separate spiritual creation,
it can't have been
and
that
it's
much before. I mean, it could have,
and
but
it
it's,
doesn't have to be. It could be a little bit. It could be in
yeah.
a million years. Like it doesn't matter. Again, not in the Bible. We don't necessarily need to know. It's one of those things where we can make our best guesses, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
We get it wrong.
I would probably go with the light theory at the moment. That's where I kind of am. But I could possibly see that, but still at the light
Mhm.
theory.
Okay.
Um, But yeah, so there's some different possibilities where the angels could have been created.
Yeah.
So that's just we wanted to tackle that a little bit just because Genesis, the creation story, and obviously
Mhm.
angels in the spiritual realm is obviously
Yeah.
real. Like if you dispute that, you need to go read your Bible.
Right.
So or read your Bible in a different way. Yeah. So here's another question that people like to talk about: does extraterrestrial life come into play in the creation story? And but what I mean by that is like a lot of people will be like, oh well, maybe aliens could exist from a Christian perspective, and it's like, well, I don't think they could. The reason being, where were they created, and how would have that have fit in the creation story? The only intelligent life, quote unquote, the only I don't know how to say that right. The only the only creature, the because angels can be
Sentient,
physical, so it's like the only the only
sentient creation.
well, angels are sentient. You can't call them not sentient. So
I'm saying the only other sentient creation is angels.
right, but I mean out of all of the creatures, out of
Mhm.
all of the creatures, Adam and Eve are the only ones who are created sentient.
Yeah,
Not talking about the spiritual realm, just in
just
our
physical. Yeah,
right in
physical
our physical
creatures.
realm, right?
I mean,
And so they're the only ones who are mentioned like that. There's nothing mentioned about other planets, just like we were talking about. There's like the all the Dominion stuff that we were talking about.
yeah,
There's nothing on other planets, right? So there's nowhere it could have happened. And if they were created, we already talked about this a little bit in the UFO report. You guys should go check that out. But
yeah.
if they were created, they wouldn't. Are they in God's image and etc.? But they can't be
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah, it's the whole point of a sentient being is a being that can understand its own existence, and to have that, it must both have a body and a soul, like humans. For a physical creature, it must have a soul to be able to understand, to have a higher will. We've talked about this before, but it's as if a creature has a very low will. They're mostly instinct. It's mostly do what's best for me in the moment. It's best for me. Something's attacking me, run away. I want to attack something, chase it. I want to eat
right.
that, I'm going to just do it. It
Hmm.
doesn't really, it's really only on what's best for it. It's instinct. They act on instinct. That's why you can't hold a conversation about the stuff like this with a dog. It's even if you could communicate with it, their mind wouldn't be able to grasp it. The difference between humans is we also have souls. We're not simply just physical. We're not
Hmm.
just flesh. We are flesh and spirit. So that gives us a higher a mind, and that is what's created in the image of God is the fact that we can reason. We have reason, unlike any other creature. We have
Hmm.
reason. We can we can think. We can communicate with God. We can show real emotions, and so it would have to be another like a sentient alien life would have to be another body spirit creation. In the scriptures, it never mentions another. And then if you want to go purely on the scientific side, there's no other planet yet discovered, don't think will ever be discovered, that could actually support life. The uniqueness of Earth and how God has set up the ecosystem, and even if you spread out farther and go how he set up our atmosphere, how he set up the magnetic shield to protect us from the sun, how he set up the universe and the solar winds and such to
Hmm.
protect the universe. Like, I mean, the galaxy we're in, how he's just set everything up is so perfect, down to the ocean salt level, to the makeup of our atmosphere, the distance from the sun. It's just it's also intricately done that the like the likelihood that if you're an evolutionist, it would happen several times is impossible. And then if you're a believer, I guess you could believe that God did that twice or multiple times, but you have to find a scriptural base for it in that case because it's not a scientific base. Like if you're a young Earth creationist, like we are looking at the Bible and want to put aliens in there somehow, I don't see a spot to do it because then you'd have since all creation fell, you'd have them falling because of Adam.
Right.
Unless, like we've talked about before, they would have to have a different federal head. They would have to had to fall at the same time as Adam for everybody to fall at that time. Or they fell because of Adam, which means it's another group of humans because Adam was the federal head of humans. You see, so
Hmm.
it doesn't really work out, and that means Christ would have had to either die in multiple places, or he would have had to again they would have been a bunch of humans. He dies here, and then they have to somehow learn about Christ.
It just doesn't work.
It
One,
doesn't make sense. How
it's
and then if
not
it's another group of
palatable.
humans, that means there's different humans than Adam and Eve created on day six. Or it doesn't say that. The only
Hmm.
life it says is created is here on Earth. So it's stretching it to try to fit aliens into the Bible. It's unnecessary. It's just people wanting to make it, I guess, more exciting or more sci-fi than it is. There's plenty of exciting stuff in there. You don't have to add more. So it's one of those things where it's people trying to add stuff that's not there.
Yeah. So, anyway, what are the common objections to creation and the 6 day creation week and young earth, etc.? Like that evolutionists bring up, atheists bring up, when they talk to you, that kind of thing. What are some of those? Because I know you thought about this stuff. So
But
what are your thoughts?
well, you got to know objections to have a clear worldview. You got to know the other side. So there are a lot of objections that throw around. I'm gonna try to deal with a few popular ones. So and most of these they're gonna be kind of scientific. So it's whether they're an older creationist or a secular evolutionist. It'll humanist. It'll they should deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one called the distant starlight problem, and that's where they say light from stars millions of years away needs millions of years to get here, and we can see those stars. So they expand their theory of the universe by however far they can see star. They know the Earth, the universe is at least that old. Plus,
Hmm.
they are going to add a little bit farther, so that those times can form. So they're constantly changing their view. But they tell us, hey, you say it's only maybe 6 to 10,000, that range, years
Right.
old. You don't have time to see all these stars. There's tons of stars you shouldn't be able to see. And that does stump some people, where some people will start to question this is the beginning of Genesis.
Right.
There's a very simple answer. You just got to believe it. It's one of those things where they're going to, evolutionists might try to rebut it. Don't have to listen to this. It's very clear. It's day one, God created light.
Hmm.
That answers your whole question. He created the light. Day four, he puts the stars behind it. The light has already been created from whatever stars he wanted us to see. If there's stuff outside that, just for his pleasure, great. The range we can see is light he'd already put in place to shine to us so that we might see his handiwork that far away.
Yeah.
So it's day one. That's why I don't think the light is angels in the beginning, is because I think it's the light he put coming from the stars.
Yeah.
So
Which I could definitely see that. Yeah.
that's where I see that, and that's how I handle that. It's he created it already coming. I mean, day one, that's what you have. Is he separated dark from light? He's now made light coming from stars, and where there's light not when there's not light coming from stars, there's dark. So it's light, dark. Okay, so when he day four puts them there, there's then a source that after the creation week, it's emitting light. So we don't know
Hmm.
exactly. Yeah, there's a couple theories about how stars emit light, but specifically, we don't exactly know. There's like if it's electrical or if it's um, atomic fission process. Like there's a couple popular theories, but the fact is there was light coming to the Earth before there were stars and the sun to shine. So that seems like a pretty simple answer right there that
Hmm.
people tend to overlook. And it's just when you
Yeah.
read your Bible and think about it, it tells you what the answers are a lot of the time. You don't have to make up random answers and
Yeah.
theories. It's just believe the Bible.
Yeah.
And then I think probably another one is, I guess, the Bible. People will say the Bible, it's old. It's just a story a bunch of men made up.
Hmm.
Some Jews compiled a bunch of old books, you know, fantasy books and stuff, and they just picked some out and picked some, just for fun. What I have to say to that is that the accuracy of the scriptures, when you read some of the earliest books, which are dated the times before this, the official establishment of the Jewish nation. So like Moses, like these are dated back to Moses' time with prophecies about Roman times. I think that it's self-authenticating. It's not that they took a bunch of books over just tons of time
Hmm.
and compiled them, or they wrote some of these old books, these supposedly old books. They wrote them after facts. It's proven that this stuff happened before. So like a lot of like Isaiah was one of those books where they were like they thought the first half of it was written by one person and the second half another person, like secularists. They were like chapters 40 to 66 were all written after like Jesus and everything, because they
Hmm.
have a lot of prophecies about Jesus. But then when the Qumran caves were found with all the scrolls, they found a scroll with the end of chapter 39 and the beginning of chapter 40 on the same page in the same script, which proves it was one scroll, one book written by Isaiah hundreds of years before Christ. The last Old Testament book is 400 years before Christ.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Just can we imagine 400 years in the future? People can even guess who's gonna win an election most of the time. Like just like a couple months from. It's not gonna.
Hmm.
Um,
400 years ago, it was
it's
1600.
nuts.
It was
Like how?
1620s.
Yeah, they probably thought we were gonna be on hoverboards and colonizing Mars.
Yeah.
It's like we can make our guesses, but we don't know the future. God's the only one outside of time, so he's already created the future. So it's not gonna. So it proves that it's God's word because only He would know such things. No
Hmm.
man could make these things up. Could just write a bunch of stuff on their paper and then happen to get everything right. You know, it was like 300 prophecies about Christ, fulfilled them all. So like 300 prophecies were made by some random guys, and some guy happened to fulfill them all. And the guy also happened to be the Son of God. Like you're believing in a lot of coincidences to try to discount scripture. It's they're self authenticating. They're they're proven by archaeology, like King David. For years, they hadn't found anything that mentioned King David. They thought he was fictitious. There's many secular archaeologists. They were like, he's fictitious. And guess what? They ended up finding a
Mm-hmm.
stone in the name House of King David in Bethlehem. And since then they have found many more mentions of him and
Mm-hmm.
other kings. It was written before they found any of that. They believe
Yeah.
sketchier books like that, like Iliad and Homer, which have only like a couple dozen or maybe a couple hundred copies around, partial copies, like that date back very far. Yet they try to discount the most widely spread book and the most anciently sourced book. It is nearly identical to the Qumran parchments, with minor differences in like punctuation and stuff. Like it is stayed so true to the original text because God protects His word. He says, "Not an iota will pass from my word." It is His word. He protects His word.
I guess unlike the Mormon God who let his word get corrupted, quote unquote.
Oh, I guess Mormons, the
Nah,
Mormons,
I
they'd
just
be
totally
like,
threw
we
that
don't.
out.
This Bible, we learned all of we need to know. We need something else.
That was out of pocket. I just totally came out and dissed
Yeah.
them.
I'm trying to think. Other. I don't think of any other objections. Have you any other
What
objection like
about
you want to throw at me?
carbon dating?
It's flawed.
I know
So,
it's so. Ugh!
so it's how they do it is it's that they do it carbon dating specifically. There's a lot of different dating, but they do it basically off the half life of something deteriorating, which the
Mhm.
half life is how long it takes half that thing to deteriorate. So one half life is say you've got 20 grams of carbon 14, the half life is goes down to 10 grams, and then another half life 5, another half life 2.5. You see, so so
Mhm.
so that's how they study it, and it's the same period to break it down. So it takes 1 year to break down the first 10, another year just to break down the first 5, or something similar to that degree. Now every mineral breaks down at different rates and such. So theoretically that would be a great way to date if stuff were sealed in a vacuum. But the problem is stuff is not sealed in a vacuum. So when you take a rock and you see the deterioration of the carbon 14 into carbon 12 in the rock, it the half life of carbon 14 pretty long. So when they see carbon 14 in stuff or plants or whatever, and they see that there's even a little bit, they're like, oh, this has to be millions of years old. This is a very long half life. It takes time to deteriorate, which is what they say. But the fact is, any traceable amount would deteriorate within a million years, with specifically. So they stopped using that specific type of carbon dating. But the problem with any type of carbon or chemical dating is
Mhm.
that first they have to assume how much was in it to start. That's the first assumption. We assume this is how much it would start with. Okay. And then they have to guess if there were no weather events that would have changed it, like added or washed it faster, and they have to assume that the rate has stayed the same of deterioration. Which in a vacuum, technically that's true. You would if you sealed something in a vacuum, the half life would stay the same.
Right.
You'd be able like if you took a rock, you tested what was in it, stuck it in a vacuum, and watched its half life, you'd be able to fill out all the scientific charts you want, work all the
Mhm.
equations. But the problem is we don't have the beginning of the equation or the middle of the equation. We just have the end, and we're trying to guess everything else. You see, so it's people they see what's come, but they don't have anything else in the equation, and it's assuming to fill that in, and then they call it fact. They say, here's our assumptions based on we believe the Earth is this old, so we believe it's broken down this much over this much time without any other effects, like weather events. What other events?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so it's extremely flawed thinking, and people just assume because they dated it to that old. It's it doesn't work. In theoretically, it's an interesting idea to try to work out, but in reality, it's not a reliable way to measure anything.
It's really annoying. Yeah. Definitely, but that's a major objection I hear. And then another one's like, "Oh, well, what about dinosaurs?" It's like, well, that's not that hard. Dinosaurs got created during the 6 day creation week,
Yeah,
and then we
some on
just
day
killed
five,
most of them. Like,
yeah. What?
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying an interesting one is like with the dinosaurs, is people say they can't fit on the ark.
Oh my.
It's like
Oh my.
he took two of every clean animal, two pairs of every clean animal. I mean, he took two of every clean animal and seven pairs of every unclean. That also even Christians don't notice that's in there. But that means max he's taking what like seven pairs. That's 14 dinosaurs. Small
Huh.
dinosaurs. You can easily fit 14 small dinosaurs on that thing. Have you seen that thing? It's massive. Like the replica
Yeah.
that can hand built, easily fit 14 little dinosaurs on there. You get adolescents.
Yeah, little baby
Dinosaurs weren't
dinosaurs.
always as big as you think. They were few. They were big, and all those huge sea monsters would have just stayed the sea.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hey, oh, another one is how did plants survive the flood? Because salt
so
water.
okay, so here's how it would be. different different plants. Some plants would be actually ingested by the animals before they went on the land. So they'd be digesting plants, which will help spread seeds from the dung. Will have keep seeds in them from plants they eat. Also, a lot of plants have pods around the seeds to help protect them, and those pods will eventually break down, but they take time. So it's you have the flood, all of these seeds are swirled, some are smashed under the soil or that kind of thing, and are buried over time. And then when the water drains back into whatever original cavities they were in or whatever, then those seeds they settle on the earth. So they've been protected in their pods these whole time, like
Mhm.
stuff like pine cones or walnuts. Like there's a lot of trees we have to like smash them open. They're pretty stinking hard or
Mhm.
something. And then then those seeds once they get deep in the soil, those pods will start to break down. They start breaking down in the soil, like on the soil, and then they will release the seed down into the ground. They stay over the top until the seeds germinated, and then the seed starts growing. And so it's pretty simple. It's just they were in pods. I'm sure there were a lot of plants that didn't survive, like types of plants that didn't survive, but there were plenty that could have. There's so many with hard nut shells and such, and then you only got to get a few different variations to survive because of the genetic makeup of a lot of plants. There allows a lot of variation, just like animals. They can change in their kind on their genetic tree to look different, like different types of cats and dogs, and I mean you got different types of grasses, different types of trees. I mean you only have to get so many to actually make it. There was still
Yeah.
enough genetic information in their genus at that time. It wasn't really as far as we think after creation, only about 1,500 years or so. So there was some genetic variation, but was there wasn't as much as there could have been. Which now we see another 4,500 years after that or so. There's a lot of variation.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's a lot of the common objections that we get to the creation story as Christians. But what are the evidences for creation, like explicitly,
Oh,
besides the grand design
yeah.
and
Well,
the
yeah,
genius design of literally everything,
yeah. I mean, you
and
look
the
at the
ingenuity of the human body?
what do
And
you mean besides that? That's like super important.
I'm just kidding.
It's
No, but
like
like
other than the obvious proof, we're gonna come up with something else.
other than the way that it's been masterfully designed, like an
Mm,
artist painting, like
okay.
is
Yeah.
there any
Well,
others?
think about this. Think about this. This is kind of when people will say, "Why does there need to be a creator or something?" We'll be like, "Hey, so
Mhm.
you see those shoes you're wearing? How'd those come to be? Or did they just show up, or did somebody make? It's like, oh, that's somebody made it. So
Mhm.
something way more complicated than your shoes just popped into being when your shoes can even pop to being on their own, and they're much simpler than the creation. It's one
But
of the
what
things
if they
where
had millions of years to bounce around?
so if I took a Lego set, I took all the pieces from a Lego set and I poured them in a bucket and I just shook it up for a million years, would the set ever form?
No.
Precisely. You can
What
have
if,
all the components, but if they're not put together correctly, they fall apart. And Lego is actually a lot stronger than most parts of the cell.
and where did the Lego pieces come from?
Exactly.
Where's that? Anyway, we're talking about the
You either believe in infinite matter, infinite energy, like just that condensed matter and energy. You either believe in that or you believe in God.
yeah,
But the problem with believing in infinite matter and energy is that then becomes your God because there has to be an unmoved mover. If that, which so that means even if you did believe in original spec, there would have to be something to move that speck, or that speck would never move. There has to be something that cannot move that is moving, and that is God. He is the hand behind all things. He is outside space and time. He does not move. He is the mover of all things. He is the source of all. So it's and all things flow from him. It's if there's not a sustainer, nothing will be sustained. Second law of thermodynamics. It's like energy has to be put in, or stuff will deteriorate. It's just, I mean, it's basic common sense. There has to be a starting point of
Yeah.
all things.
Yeah. So throughout this episode, we discussed through Genesis 1, the creation account, and how the creation, like the entire Bible, is about God. You know, God's the main character. It starts with "in the beginning, God," which is a profound phrase. It's just a banger of 4 words. That's
what a start!
Just what a start to a book. And we talked about how creation is not an essential doctrine, but it's an extremely important doctrine. Extremely important. Like, next level down, but like still really important, you know? We talked about a lot of the interesting points in the creation story, about the stars, angels, etc., etc. We also, like I just said, talked about when the angels were created. We talked about how extraterrestrial life can't be in the creation story and is incompatible with the Christian faith. We talked about some of the common objections that evolutionists and atheists bring up against the creation story in the Bible. We brought up some of the evidences for creation. I mean, we kind of skimmed over, but they're pretty. Should we go over them again? Because, like, I mean, they're pretty obvious. You just look at nature.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot, like a passage. Yeah, this is Romans 1:18-21.
Yeah.
For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world. In these things that have been made, so that they are without excuse. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, because they became futile in their thinking and their foolish hearts were darkened. That
Thank you guys for watching.
is our age. That is what we live in. We live in a world of foolish hearts that have been darkened and ignore God, who clearly shows himself not only in the scriptures, but also in nature, in space, plants, animals. That just the complexity of dirt, like it's just everything, the human body, the genome, the cell, like it's so complicated and beautiful and intricate. It's how could you not walk outside and be like, that's just how can you walk outside and be like, this is just showed up. There's just explosions created things. Explosions destroy things. They don't create. It's nuts. It's our world has gone truly mad when they ignore such a clear thing.
Yeah. But yeah, so we discussed a little bit about the evidences for creation, and yeah, so that was our episode on creation. Thank you guys for watching. We did just launch our Twitter. I mentioned that in the beginning, but just reminding you, the description will be in the link will be in the description down below. Make sure to subscribe, just because this is a lot of hard work, and all support we're grateful for all support. So thank you guys. We also have a Discord. If you guys want to join that, we'll put that in the description as well. So thank you for joining us to help us with creation, Ben. And yeah, thank you for joining though. Yeah. All right. Well, see you guys later. Next week should be a surprise episode. You'll see what Isaac and I get into. All right. We'll see you guys. Bye. It's also really interesting that this is all the stars will come down.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're angels, angelic beings, hear me out.
We'll find out. We'll find out. Dissolved and there's angels. If they're like they're dissolved and the angels come down, it's like.
And then you realize that NASA's a bunch of liars. Yes.
I mean, I said that in there. I was like,
bunch of Nazis.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I was saying it's like there's theories about what stars are, but we don't exactly know because we can't go like test them.